Welcome and thank you for tuning in. I'm your host, Aaron Diaz, and you're listening to episode number 16 of Live the Good Life from the podcast studios of Aaron's Wine Chronicles corporate headquarters in the heart of Washington wine country. Today, I'll be interviewing a winery owner, an outstanding winemaker, a culinary expert, a wine historian, and a whiskey distiller, all in one human body. We'll be discussing his experiences in the wine industry, his knowledge about Washington wine history, his winemaking approach, and some of his insights into some delicious wine pairing recipes. My guest is the owner and winemaker of Narratif Winery and Northwest Wine Collaborative located in Prosser, Washington. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give it up for Mr. JJ Compeau. Welcome to the show.
Wow, we got a lot of people here today.
Yeah.
Glad to be here.
Good having you. Well, thanks very much, JJ, for taking time out of your day to come down and join the podcast. Why don't you give us just a brief little background and introduce yourself for the audience?
Well, just JJ Compeau. I've been in the industry for over 20 years now. Started Narratif Winery late 2016, 2017 vintage, and basically have worked every aspect of the business and worked in food and owned delis and worked in fine dining and just basically I think I was geared my whole life to be where I'm at right now. It's kind of amazing.
That's good. That's a good place to be. Again, thank you for being here. It's great having you on the show. We have a tradition here at Aaron's Wine Chronicles where when we're in the studio, we're always enjoying some sort of libation. Most of the time, because I'm only like 15, 16 episodes in, right, and you've kind of kept tabs on this, most of the people have been in the wine industry. And so typically we're cracking open a bottle of wine. Not to say that wine drinkers don't drink other things, because they do. But, today is not much different from some of the other times. This is the wine that we're sharing today is a 2017 Old Vines Cabernet Sauvignon from Woodward Canyon Winery in Loudon, Washington. Loudon is just a small town that's just west of Walla Walla in southeast Washington. The grapes are sourced from Sagemore and Shampoo vineyards. And before we started recording, we had a chance to just take a couple of sips of this. What are your thoughts on this? What do you think about this?
Well, you chose one of my favorite wines from Washington. I kind of grew up with this particular wine, so I'm pretty excited to try it. But
and that was not by, that was by total chance, right? Because we haven't even discussed. I didn't even know when I sent you the draft of the questions and stuff. I didn't even have the wine chosen at that time. So
I was trying to find. I have a storage unit, and I was trying to find the 99 to bring today. So it's even funnier that this is a 17. Which
right. But it's for a 17, it's just beautiful.
There's nothing wrong with Woodward Canyon.
No, nothing at all. So, how did you get into the wine industry? You've had your hands in a lot of things. You seem to me to be a guy who's passionate about stuff, and when you go into something, you're not a half-assed type of guy who just dabbles in something. I think that when you do it, and I may be wrong, but when you do it, you kind of are a perfectionist. That's kind of the way you've come off in some aspects, especially with the wine, because everything that I've had that you've touched seems to be rather delicious.
I love wine and food, and I got exposed to the food culinary side at a very young age, and I got exposed to the Washington wine industry at a very young age as well. So I think I was 17 when I was working at a fine dining restaurant and got exposed to first growth and second growth Bordeaux. And this is going to be funny, but the first wine that got me in Washington that I actually liked from the red wine side was a 1983 Woodward Canyon Merlot.
Really?
Yes. That was the one where I went, oh, I get this from Washington, because we were being taught about French wines while we were at the infancy of the Washington wine industry. That's kind of where I was at.
Wow.
So basically, that's where it all started for me. And from that point on, I've been on a journey but I had to learn wine and food pairing at the beginning just to appreciate wine. And by doing that, I fell in love with wine, and so that's why I think it's never left me, the wine and food pairing side of this whole journey that I'm on. And I can't taste a wine without thinking food pairing first.
Really,
That is
really.
just kind of, for me, it still
Yeah.
blows my mind. I will taste, like, if I have to make winemaker notes, I will taste the wine and pork loin will pop in my head or something like that. And then I'll sit there and break down what I'm smelling and tasting and all that stuff. So,
So I mean, that's an interesting attribute about you, characteristic. So are you the kind of guy that doesn't necessarily enjoy sipping on wine solo unless there's food involved, or can you enjoy a wine thoroughly for what it is without food? Because
No.
my wife is that way. My wife loves to have something to pair with the wine, and very rarely will she just drink a wine on its own unless it's like,
There is wines that were made to be drank
Yeah,
alone.
yeah.
We know those wines, and there's wine that made for food. So yes, I do both, 100%.
Okay.
I'm not 100% foodie. I'm offended that we have to drink this without food. I'm not.
Okay.
But but my heart is wine and food. So I mean that can't deny what my calling is, I guess.
Yeah. Well, it shines through on your winemaking, and we're going to get into that in a little bit. But this is kind of a segue into your historical knowledge that you've built up over time through your experiences. You are kind of known as a historian, at least in the wine clique that I have, had a chance to know and to get it and to associate with, the folks at Witt Cellars and the folks at Cote Bonneville and others who you have worked tightly with. And you're known as a Washington wine historian. And I think it's really impressive because I've been to your tasting room. I hear you talking to other patrons when I'm sitting there, with an empty glass waiting for a pour. No, I'm just kidding. When I've come in and visited, love going to your place. And as I'm sitting there and I'm watching you do your spiel, and I'm thinking, man, this guy, you have a lot of knowledge about not just the wine that you're crafting, not just the approach that you took to that wine and how you aged it and where the grapes came from, but from an earlier historical perspective, like the soil, the terroir, the things that happened over thousands of years to get the soil to have the minerality that it has and whatever else, right? I mean, there's so many factors involved in how this area was shaped, and then the history of the grapes and when they were planted and all of that. I mean, that's a podcast all on its own, to be honest with you.
Oh, yes.
But
Sure.
I would like to kind of ask you, from a historical perspective, can you highlight some of the key elements in your mind that make Washington wine stand out from other regions?
Wow. Well, that's a tough question right off the get-go. I feel like a part of me grew up with the Washington wine industry. I was very young, and when I got into the industry, I think there was less than 100 wineries, and we're over 1,000 now.
Yeah.
But I really the one thing about Narratif, which in French means to tell the story, and so I've been telling the story of Washington for 20 some years. I feel like we need to remember the past to be able to move forward in our future. So for me, the parts of the past are that, like, how crazy and what an exciting time to be those first winemakers that were told that this is not a world-class area and that you're not supposed to grow vinifera grapes in Washington, and they were crazy enough to do it. To me, those people are the most interesting people in the world, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like we have to thank these people for where we're at now. So for me, trying to get back to your question. What I love about it is there's that sense of you bring what you like. We're peasant farmers and those things. They came hundreds of years ago and they brought what they knew, right? The Italians, like if you go down to Walla Walla, there's a lot of Italian varietals that are probably 100 sporadically throughout there. I remember Leonetti, Gary Figgins talking about that there was Italian immigrants planting, Italian varietals in the 1800s.
Right.
And so a lot of that early people just brought if you wanted wine, you had to be a winemaker back then, right? So you had to bring that thought process and all those things. And it goes back to getting like the early vinifera grapes. Like if you come to the taste room, I have that 106-year-old vine from Upland Vineyard. Think of that. 106 years old in Washington, someone's planting vinifera grapes to make wine out of.
Man.
So to me, I don't know if I'm answering the question properly, but that sense of romance of the wine, and people were so adamant about making it early on for their lifestyle. We drink wine with our food, with our family, and we're going to do it regardless if we're supposed to grow it here in this area, right?
Right, yeah.
And to me, that resonates with me big time, especially from a historical standpoint, or someone who loves history. I love collecting. I collect old 100-year-old bottles and those type of things, and I just feel like they have a story, and we need to remember that, because that story is what made us who we are and gives us depth and flavors. I call it onions.
Yeah.
Like I like people who are onions who have layers to them.
Yeah.
And I love finding out like a little old lady like climbed Mount Everest. You're like, what? I don't see I don't see the connection, but I want more. I want to learn more about that person. So I don't know if I answered the question right.
Well,
I think I went on a rant.
No, you have started to answer the question. For those in the audience who have not visited JJ's winery, it's in Prosser, Washington. He'll have a chance to talk about that a little bit more later on. And when you go in, he has historical remnants from vineyards. Like he's taken these roots, these vines that are you could hug. They're like small trees, and he puts them up on the wall for you to see. And he talks to them, and he talks to the fact that things happen to the grapes that are produced as the vineyard vines get older and older, right? And then he has samples of soil and layers of rocks and soil samples in jars that he talks about, and that's also some of what goes into the bottle. It's part of what affects the bottle, the wine in the bottle, and so you bring a lot of aspects to wine in your tasting room through the tasting experience that you don't get almost anywhere else.
What I wanted to create in the taste room is just wherever you walk in that taste room, there is a story to tell. And so we have the rocks from De Brule Vineyard on one of the tables. So when you are drinking De Brule, you can actually touch and feel and have that tactile sense, which I think is very much a part of the romance of wine tasting and drinking. And that's why I think there's a wave of people. One, like Woodinville has been very successful because there's a huge volume of consumers there. But by getting a base of consumers into Washington wines, now they want to see the vineyard. They want to touch the vineyard. They want to go, hey, where is this grown? It's in Eastern Washington. So what I want to do in my tasting room is, if we can't be in the vineyard that day, I can still bring as much as I possibly can to you, so you can still get that tactile, fun feel. And we have all the photographs of the vineyards and maps. And I have old maps from the 80s when there was very few wineries in Yakima Valley, and I think there was only 5 at that time in Walla Walla, which we know there's a few more now in Walla Walla.
Yeah, just a few.
Yeah, and so for me, it's like, yes, when you come to the tasting room, I want you to have as many different stories available to you as possible.
Yeah.
And for me, that's what I want from being a consumer. I love going to a tasting room and getting the flavor of the winery and what they're trying to tell me and the stories they want to tell me. I want to know the stories.
Right.
The wines are pretty good right now, don't you think? You go around tasting all the time. We make pretty good wine.
We make really good wine.
What's the story? Give us the flavor.
Yeah. Exactly. Over the years, who would you say has had the most influence on your winemaking?
I don't know how to answer that one, because I've had, I truly believe that it's just a bunch of being exposed to a lot of people over 20 some years. I think it's a layering of lots of different people. But if I if you were tying me down for, I would say probably Flint Nelson would be the one from Wit Cellars,
Right.
because him and I worked together the longest.
So were you guys together at Kestrel?
Yes, we were.
Okay.
And also we go back to the Brian Carter days back at Washington Hills and
okay.
Bridgman and Apex.
Wow. Okay, so there's even more. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
So and even Kat from Wit goes back with us 20 years as well.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. So I feel their family, and and as you know, by being in this, getting into this industry and just being exposed to it, especially from the smaller wineries, we're all family. We all help each other out.
Yeah.
And
That theme, that's a redundant theme in other interviews that I've done with some of the Washington winemaker people, and that, it's a big family. I mean, you guys are it's a pretty close-knit group. I mean,
that aspect is probably what keeps most of us in the in the business going, because it's a tough business, especially now. It's a tough one.
So the average consumer, the average wine person going out wine tasting, the limos filled with the bachelorette parties and such. Well, I'm just being facetious, but you get your average wine consumers. They're going out, they're visiting tasting rooms. They want to just taste the wines and find something that they like, buy it, go home, crack it open, whatever. And they're going to these tasting rooms. They've got names on the windows. You've got kind of a unique name. You've got Narratif / Northwest Wine Collaborative. I kind of know the story behind it because I've chatted with you about it quite often. But for the consumers out there who aren't really familiar with that, can you take us through the process, how it came about? Now, I think Northwest Wine Collaborative was something that you did before you established Narratif, your winery. Or is that not true?
I established both of them at the same time.
Okay.
So basically, we always get at a crossroads in our life, right? And so I was at the point where I was like, should I stay in the industry or should I move on? And I think everyone at some point in their life, doesn't matter if you're super passionate about any business that you're in, at some point you come to think, am I done?
Is this all there is? Is this all there is?
Should I move on?
Yeah.
And then it was late at night, and I was sitting there going, should I jump out? And everyone at that, as I was in the industry, a lot of people are like, when are you going to start your own winery? And it was just like, well, someday, And I got one night, I was just like, I'm either leaving or I got to jump in. I got to put both feet in. And it was late at night, and so I wanted to do, I said, I've been in the business forever. I've been telling the story of Washington wine. I love the history. I love everything. I want to keep that as my branding point of my business, the storytelling part. So then I thought, storyteller winery. Oh, no one's thought of that, right? So I did that and found out, I think there was like 11 or 13 wineries around the world called Storyteller. And not that I ever feel like my winery is going to blow up or do anything like that, because I feel like I'll stay a micro winery. But I thought I'd be just big enough to get sued, right?
Right.
And so I thought, well, I'm not going to do that. And then I thought, well, what other way of branding that storyteller idea? What feels like something like that? And then the one part earlier was, I was like, I love working with my friends. I love working with the vineyards. I love the collaboration part from the vineyard to the winemaking to the consumers to the wine shops to the restaurants. I love that collaboration. So I kept saying that over and over again. And then I thought, is Northwest Wine Collaborative taken? And I typed it in and it wasn't. And I said, oh, that's my business name, Northwest Wine Collaborative.
Oh,
right? Okay. So that's my Northwest Wine Collaborative LLC. But then I was like, but what is the winery? Who am I? What am I going to be doing? And it was about storytelling, about that sense of place, talking about the vineyards, all of that. So
you just used a different language. And
so I went to my French heritage, and I thought narrative, which in French is basically the same.
Okay.
But then I saw the adjective, which means to tell the story, narratif. And I went, that's what that's what my bottles do. They tell a story.
Sacre bleu.
and that's where we're at, right?
Yeah.
So,
well, cool.
Then it gets easy to focus on what does Narratif means. It means telling the story from the vineyard
Right.
or the sense of the place. So instead of being a Yakima winery only making Yakima fruit and being in the industry as long as I have and loving all of the state, it takes the handcuffs off in my sense that I have the ability to go anywhere in the state and tell the story. So that's what the goal is over the next 5 to 10 years, is to do as many different AVAs as I can.
Oh, wow.
And I think that's the journey club members would love to be a part on.
That is really cool.
Right? And so
Yeah.
you can go to Walla Walla. We can go to the Rocks District. We can go to Horse Seven Hills. We can go to Red Mountain. We can go to Ancient Lakes. And the club members can be a part of it. So that's the journey that, as I move forward, is what I'm excited for. But when you're such a micro winery, you want to move so much faster than you can actually do it.
Yeah.
And so it's a slow pace.
So, I mean, the first wine that I tasted that you crafted was a Northwest Wine Collaborative Red.
Right.
Okay. And so, and then later on, of course, that's why I wasn't sure what came first, but they kind of came together because you're saying the LLC was how you started it, but then you also...
What I wanted to do is have a label where I could allow it to develop into anything it wants to do. So it came out of the obviously the pandemic helped us with the collaboration Red, where I went to my friends Witt and Hightower, who I've known forever, and we were all pretty stressed out at the time. I was restaurant only at that time. I didn't have a tasting room. So, and my brand and everything holds hands with restaurants. So when they're hurting, I'm hurting. And so when they closed down, I thought my business was over. And I really, I'm going to say this long, sorry. I thought I'm done. And I was like, I haven't built the brand up enough where I could disappear and no one will really care. Back in 2020, I was like, I could just leave. But I was like, nah, I can't.
Oh.
I know how to sell wine. I know this is where I'm at. This is what I want to do. So I went to my friends and said, let's make this wine. And instantly they got excited. It lowered the stress level. Remember how everyone had stress? I don't know if you,
Oh, no,
but if
it
you
was
were a
everywhere.
business owner, there was like this stress.
Yeah.
I didn't know I had the kind of stress that I did until it left. And I went, oh, I've been stressed out for a year and a half or whatever, or
Right.
2 years, whatever it was. And so the collaboration was something that rejuvenated all of us. And what I want from that program is, where does this collaboration go? I don't know. And I'm letting it morph. Like, I gave some barrels to Dry Fly to make whiskey, some barrels from that. And I'm hoping over the next year or so to work with a few breweries, because I'm a beer guy too, right? I like, a lot of us drink beer during fermentation because we get tired of drinking wine. And what do we drink? We drink local hazy IPAs or whatever. And so I'm hoping to work with some breweries and have them take my barrels and make beer from them, so that I didn't want to lose that little brand, because I want it to morph into whatever it can do. And right now it's kind of exciting because people are coming and say, hey, you want to do something? So we'll see how it develops, but it has to feel right too, right? Like the first one with Witt and Hightower, it couldn't have been any better.
Yeah.
And we're already making our second one. We're going to make a third one. So.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Yeah.
Wow. So you hit on all kinds of stuff. I could see how this could be like a 4-hour podcast, but we'll try to get it back on track. But this I'm learning a lot about stuff that I knew a little bit of, but now I know a little bit more.
Right.
Can you help the audience understand how you determine where you're going to source your grapes, for when you're actually, going to get the wines for a specific vintage? I mean, like, each vintage you probably have in your mind. Do you go by what's available, or do you target and say, I'm gonna make these wines this year, and I'm gonna go after grapes from this vineyard, Boucher, wherever? How do you determine that? And so I guess the question probably gets us into a discussion of some of your favorite vineyards, and also, what those vineyards provide you in terms of fruit and flavor profiles and other factors that you want for your wines.
Right. Well, first and foremost, money talks.
Yeah.
And so this year in particular, there's a wealth of phenomenal fruit that I would love to purchase. but it's not going to happen because I have a budget, right, to
Right.
stick to. But what I would say is, it's real easy to get fruit. It's really hard to get the best fruit, right? Because there's usually a waiting list, right? Or there's a following in it, and people don't break their contracts with the best fruit in the state, right? So when I finally decided to let people know that I was going to go on my own, I had it was pretty humbling and emotional that people came out of the woodworks and said, "What can we do for you?
Yeah,
Let's
really.
help you out."
Yeah.
So for me to get Red Willow and DeBrule fruit and be able to tell the story from those vineyards right off the get-go was amazing, and they fit exactly with what Narratif is all about because they are the premier vineyards in the state, right? And they have amazing stories. So they already fit my business plan and what I want to do, and I already know them. I grew up with them, right? I know the vineyards. So to me, it was like working in the industry as long as I did got me the benefit of getting some really good fruit at the beginning. So now, where do I go? Now it's a matter of what is available, how those type of things. So I'm looking for fruit all the time, but I'm trying to be very. I'm trying to get the ones that make sense for me to do the program, and one of them, which will be out next year, was I got some Red Mountain Cab from the High Towers, and it's on the upper part of Red Mountain, which I really, really love that upper part of Red Mountain. So I'm excited to have a Cabernet from Red Mountain.
Nice.
But it was through my friends that are already a part of my story.
Right.
So it totally made sense to go there. So now it's like moving forward, it's like I would love to work with a lot of different vineyards, and I'm going to reach out to some of them. Like you said, I'm going to be very specific of where I go. I love Ancient Lakes for the white varietals. I would love to get the Rocks District Syrah. I think that's the perfect varietal for that area. So I'll be very specific on what I get. The length of time till I get what I want is up to the vineyard being open with that fruit at the time that we talk. So to me,
do you ever wake up one morning and say, you know what, damn it, I want to make a Tempranillo, or out of the blue? I mean, I want to do a Mourvedre, and I want to do it. I want to just work my network and try to get some fruit for some wine that you just want to make that you haven't made before.
Yes. But it's also a matter of, like I said,
I'm sure
being a micro winery is like, I mean, I wish I could say yes. I mean, I would love to grow super fast, but that's like the worst thing to do in the wine business is grow too fast.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense, right? It's like, wow, you're selling all this wine. But if you go too fast, it's a double-edged sword. So for me, yes, I would love, like you just said, Tempranillo. That's like a grape I do want to make from Washington.
I do foresee in your future a time when you're going to be able to just wake up one morning and get all the fruit that you want for whatever wine you want to make.
Yeah, well, this could be the year.
I'm hoping. I'm glad you decided to stick with it, though.
Yeah.
I mean, you said you've been there a few times where you've thought maybe I should just go do something else, and
it's a tough biz.
All right.
Right?
Well, we've talked about kind of how you go about getting your grapes. Now let's talk about when you get your grapes and you start aging these grapes. Let's talk about the barrel program, the cooperages that you like.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a question that I ask a lot of different people. I get a lot of different answers. Sometimes people don't want to answer me with too many specifics because it's almost proprietary for some winemakers, right?
I'm 100. I'm just joking.
But you know what I'm saying? I mean, it's because it's really a deep part of the playbook for a winemaker.
I might have to shoot you in the foot.
I know. And a lot of people don't appreciate it. A lot of people, wine people who go out and taste wines and buy wines and drink wines, they don't necessarily appreciate what goes on, from choosing the cooperage that you want to go after, the barrel, the toast, and what those flavors are going to, and what's going to be imparted into your wine, why you did it, how many months you're going to put it in there, and then what you're going to transfer it to later, whatever, right? I mean, there's so many things going on people don't know about. Educate us.
Well, first and foremost, is the oak going to lead the parade or be a part of the story when you're making the wine, right?
Right.
So there's a lot of wine out there, especially if you tend to be on the high alcohol side, where you're going to add a lot of new oak, and a good amount of the initial impression of that wine is going to be oak flavors, right? Well, if you put my brand into how am I going to make wine, right? Well, Narratif is about that sense of place and that terroir and the uniqueness of the vineyard and where you're at. Well, that in itself tells you what you need to do with the oak, right? The oak does not lead the parade. And so for me, it changed. Okay, so do you do American oak, right? American oak's much quicker. It's an open-celled oak, so you get impart flavors incredibly fast. You can get oak flavors and release a wine much sooner with American oak. You get coconut, you get marshmallow, you get vanilla, toast, all those stuff, and spiciness.
And price wise, it's probably less expensive than French, right?
Yeah, but nothing's cheap right now.
Right,
But yes,
right.
yes, much. French oak is a close-celled oak, so you have to oak longer. It's a tighter grain, so you get more the cinnamon. You get more better, not better mouthfeel. You build a better texture of mouthfeel. You get the vanilla, but you get towards more of the mocha, the more coffee, those types.
But isn't that a function
especially at a
of-
medium plus? See, that's the other thing. We can go into toast levels,
Right.
medium toast, minus, medium plus. All those different factors create different flavor
and don't
profiles.
different forests within the areas where they make these things,
Yes.
different parts of the forest where they're getting the wood, that has a lot to do with those attributes you were just mentioning, right?
Yes, and also, so for me, I love for what I'm trying to do. I love French oak, and so I've settled in with Radu, which is one of the premier, and I do medium plus because I like to, but by backing out the new oak, I only do about 40% new oak.
Okay.
So that's like, in the sense of what you're trying to do, that's like me just throwing a number out there because it could be less 1 year or more depending on the vintage, right?
Right.
Or the way my oak barrels are being brought out. But usually within 10% of that, 35 to 45, that's about what I want. And the reason why I like that number is I get the strong oak impression that I want in the wine, but it's part of my recipe.
It's not dominant.
It's not dominant.
Yeah.
And so you taste it, you instantly know it's French oak, but you taste the fruit first. You get there and go, okay, I love the sense of place that this has given me versus this is really good oak. I mean, how many times you've tasted wine with people and they say 3 or 4 things about the wine that they love? It has nothing to do with the fruit. It's all
It's
about
all the
oak,
barrel.
right? And the barrels are very seductive,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Barrels seduce people.
Oh, yeah.
We have to have oak on our wine.
Just walk into a barrel room and take a breath.
Right?
I
still
could live in a barrel room. Just give me a cot and just let me.
Yeah. Well, it's
man,
going
love
to a distillery and you smell the burnt whiskey
Yeah.
barrels.
Yeah.
It's very there. So for me, it's all about. I use Radu. I do medium plus toast. I want that kind of coffee mocha. I want that vanilla kind of, and then I love the warm spices of the French oak. And so that's what I've chosen, and I want it consistent.
Right.
I want that style throughout my wines, so the vineyard can talk to you more, right? So that's the other thing: is less is more, I guess.
Yeah. So let's kind of try to pull it together a little bit. We've kind of talked about this next question a couple of times, but if you could describe your philosophy for making wine, I get the sense that it's a tie between the food appropriateness and the flavor profile of the wine on its own and with food. You're kind of doing this together. That's your philosophy. But I mean, can you expound on what your winemaking philosophy is? What you're trying to impart on the consumer?
It's pretty simple. I tell everyone when you come to the taste room, if the number one thing you say is all my wines are balanced, you are going to make me happy. So first and foremost, I want to make balanced wines. I want the wines to have great acidity. I want them to have structure so they are good food wines. And I want that oak, the fruit, and tannin and everything to be in the proper ratio. So for me, that it's more about trying to make a balanced wine that can be consumed now, right? I want the tannins to be finesse early on, but I want the tannin structure to be there that if you want to put it away, like I do, and I know you do, that it's going to be there. It's not going to fall apart. So
Right.
for me, my philosophy is real simple: make a balanced wine, and give it the structure. You have to have the acidity. You have to have the backbone. So all my wines will have acid in them. I'm not running from acid. There's a lot of wine out there that are low in acid. They are not going to be long-lived wines, right? They're going to be really enjoyable now, but they're not going to be enjoyable in the past. They're not going to be like Woodward Canyon here.
Yeah.
Woodward Canyon, I was telling you earlier, you give me a 20-year-old Woodward Canyon, I know it's going to be phenomenal. They make long-lasting wines. And for me, we need those wineries, as well as we need wineries to make wines that are consumed early. So we all have a place in this thing, and I'm just a little tiny speck in the whole thing.
For now.
But I love my little niche, wine and food. To me, that's rough life, right? Wine and food.
Yeah, exactly. That's part of the good life, and that's what this whole thing is all about.
Oh, yeah.
Live the Good Life podcast. So what makes your winery so special? I mean, you've been to a lot of wineries. You've had wine all your life. But what's really special about your winery?
I hope, I guess the term is, when you come to it, you're going to leave learning something, and you can also ask any question at the winery, and we'll answer it. And but for me, it's wine and food. Like, I'm going to give you a wine and food experience that you haven't had anywhere else, and that the geekiness will come from us to let you know that we're pretty into this, and that whatever we choose for you to enjoy is going to probably be pretty good, and that the pairing is proper, is going to be amazing. But for me, I guess the part of the brand Narratif is in the tasting room, right? You're going to get the stories when you're at our tasting room, and if you want to come and go to a wine bar and you just drink the wine and you have a good time, you order a charcuterie board and go home.
Yeah.
You can do that at our place, but darn it, we're going to probably sneak a few stories in there for you as well, right?
Yeah.
And if you are really into being a foodie and you like the stories, then you're going to have a really good time. Like I was telling some people the other day, I want to grow old at this bar. And anyone who wants to see all the bells and whistles of this taste room and talk about the rocks and all this stuff, we're going to have a great time. If you want to sit on the patio, which we have this beautiful patio that I wish more people could enjoy, and enjoy that with our wonderful cheese pairings and meats and all those fun things, then there's that possibility as well. But for me, I hope people want to come, they get the stories, they get the wine and food pairing, and they can relax.
Yeah.
And spend a couple hours.
You've done great things with the tasting room out there. Yeah, I mean, it is very relaxing. The ambiance is great. It's classy. It's got great stuff on the walls. You're not just going to sit there and stare at a blank wall. You're going to see great photos and other things. And outside, it's great too. I like, you have a big patio out there, and it's nice. Sometimes it gets windy out there, and you have to deal with that being in the Yakima Valley.
Degrees, right?
Yeah, or like 115 degrees, yeah. I've been enjoying your wines for a long, long time, and when we met, it was at Walter Clore. Now, I remember April Redout had one of these. She used to call them, one of them was like 40s, top 4, I don't know, 40 was the, and there was another one called Rising Stars, and all these kinds of things. Yeah. And we met at one of the Rising Star events where they had at the Walter Clore Center. They had a whole variety of very new up and coming winemakers showing off some of their wines, and I remember you very vividly. We chatted and ended up. I don't know if I walked away with a bottle or not at that time when we met. I may have, yeah. But then of course we crossed paths again later on at Côte Bonneville. My wife and I were there with my brother Adam and his wife, whom you've met, and we're walking out of Côte Bonneville, and you bolt out of the back door and you come out and meet us in the parking lot, and you gave us a bottle of Northwest Collaborative Red and said, "Hey, you guys take this home and share it when you guys are ready for some more wine. I think you're going to like this." Sure enough, we loved it, and that made a mark on me. You know, when you that told me that you're really passionate about what you do. You're looking to get the word out, and to me, that just kind of that was like a magnet to steal. I mean, I was just like, okay, I'm going to go check this guy out. I'm going to check out his winery, his wines, and see what's going on. So now we're talking about food. We're talking about wines. I got the sense that you intentionally craft your wines to be good with food because that's you. That's what you like, wine and food. You've made that comment a couple of times. So that leads us to this, this part of the show where I wanted the audience to understand that not only are you a wine expert, both history and making wine, but you also have some culinary expertise as well. You enjoy high-end foods, you enjoy cooking, you enjoy bringing those aspects to the tasting room. I'd like you to kind of talk about maybe some events at the tasting room that will bring food and wine together that you're going to be hosting, out there in Prosser. And also, maybe we can talk about some sort of recipe that you're very proud of that would pair really well with your wines.
Okay. Well, you were correct. We want to be wine and food centric. Mm-hmm. So we are creating more and more events that are that. I want to get people out on that patio, enjoying it. I'm hoping to have a food truck so I can bring guest chefs in on a more regular basis. And can't really leak out all my crazy ideas for that food truck, but I have some wild ones. So if anyone wants to watch what happens over the next year, it could be really a fun time. We're going to have wine and cheese pairing classes moving forward. One of the cool things that we just did is we had a cheesemaker come up from Oregon, and we did a mozzarella class. But what I want people to know is I've been in the industry long enough, and there's a lot of wineries, and there's a lot of redundancy. A lot of people do the same stuff. Mm-hmm. What I want our winery to be is whatever we're going to do, we're going to put a weird twist to it. We're going to make hopefully a fun twist or a memorable experience twist to it. So what we did is we had this cheese class. I couldn't believe it. We sold out immediately. I think we wanted 26 people. We ended up with 36. And I still had to tell people no at the end. Mm. But then what we did is we made the cheese. We had the mozzarella cheese class, but then I had my friends Cascade Crust Pizza from Prosser come with their pizza truck. And we took that fresh mozzarella and we made margarita pizzas for all the club members.
Those. Yeah.
And then the other byproduct.
So pizzas or flatbreads?
No, pizzas.
Pizzas. Oh wow.
Yes, we made each one. Everyone got one. And then the people who couldn't make the class, we opened up the patio, and we allowed them to taste the fresh cheese on the margarita pizzas out there. So we ended up almost having 100 people come. Oh, man. Right? Just from this one class. Well, I had lots of club members who missed that opportunity. Mm-hmm. So they've been clamoring for something. So November 7th, we're going to do the class again. Mm. So I'm super excited because all parties had so much fun that even Cascade Crest is like, we're in. We'll do it again. So I'm excited to offer that a class. And then after that, we're going to do maybe a burrata class and teach people how to make burrata and maybe ricotta and some other stuff. And then I'm hoping to bring some, like I bring in burrata from Colombia. And I just got the pleasure of meeting the lady from Colombia that is willing to come out to the tasting room probably in the springtime and showcase all of her wonderful cheeses. So what I want to do is bring added value experiences that are just not the normal. Like if we're going to do a charcuterie class, it's going to be about Iberico ham and some stuff that we all love and want. Right. But it's not just going to be generic stuff. It's going to be like, holy, we're really doing Iberico ham? Yeah. We're going to, those type of things. Yeah. So those are the kind of experiences that we want to do. And when the winemaker dinners, we always want to throw a twist or two into those kind of events. And October 28th, I got a friend who's going to come and we'll slowly leak out how cool this event's going to be. But it's going to be a winemaker's dinner out on the patio for only 30 people. But when it's said and done, it'll crescendo out in the foodie community because it's going to be a pretty amazing little event. But I don't want to get into too much of it because we're still in the infancy of getting them to come here and do something. So anyway,
That's cool.
yeah.
On that note, I did some due diligence, and actually, I'm lying. I did not do the due diligence. JJ did the due diligence and brought a recipe that actually was published on Sip magazine for its perfect pairing with his Narratif Red Willow Red Blend. And so this recipe, I printed it out. We both got copies of the recipe sitting in front of us, and I would like JJ to kind of walk us through this, but I'm not lying to you. It was published in Sip magazine. The recipe looks a little bit complicated for somebody like me who's just like a throw the steak on the grill type of guy, but these are the types of recipes that I really want to eventually get into making because I got the wine part of it already down spot on. Now it's just the food pairings. Mm-hmm. Take us through this this lamb tagine with lime and cilantro couscous.
Well, Tori Barr is the chef, and I had a wonderful day going over to Sip Magazine and hanging out with them. Mm-hmm. And we tasted through the wines, and we talked about wine and food pairing. And then she was a wealth of knowledge, very, very young, very talented. And I knew right away when I was talking to her that she's not going to bring me New York steak with herb butter as a recipe for my wine.
Right.
That she was going to thoroughly do something extraordinary. And what was amazing about this dish is on the surface, you see lime and you see cilantro and you're thinking a big, powerful red wine. What is going on here? But what's amazing is with the spices that are in this dish, and then you got the almonds, and you got, and then obviously lamb, a very flavorful cut of meat. And that Merlot, especially Merlot, can handle the warm spices. Mm-hmm. And this is a Merlot.
So the red blend is Merlot dominant.
Merlot
right.
dominant.
Okay.
It's Merlot, Cab, and Cab Franc.
Right.
And so it actually got bigger in chocolatier with this dish.
Really?
Right. And so, and it didn't fall apart, which you always wonder, is the dish not going to be representative of the food? Is the food, is the wine, or is the wine going to dominate? Right. And actually, the yin and yang is what you want from this. You want the food.
The complement, yeah.
The complement. You want it to make it better, and both vice versa. That's a perfect pairing. Yeah. It's where the wine makes the food better, the food makes the wine better. Some people just think of one side of that, but it should be both ways. That wine should actually make the food better. And so when you're thinking about food pairing, you want to think complementary and then 180 degrees opposite of that when you're pairing stuff. And so here you have someone who's adding lime juice, which is acidity, and acid will help bring roundness to a wine, right? Mouthfeel. And so anyway, and then the smokiness of this goes great with the Cab Franc in the wine. I think really was what probably the 9% Cab Franc was really the thing that really tied this dish together.
I am so hungry right now.
It's a fantastic dish. And then I actually had her do another dish for my Pinot Gris because I just liked what she was doing. And we've talked about her coming to, she's from Seattle.
Okay.
Having her come to the taste room and maybe making three or four of these dishes for everyone to try. So hopefully I can get her in the springtime to come, because there comes a point where no one, as we know, people don't like to travel November, December.
Yeah,
so maybe February, March, I can get her over here
right.
and do something fun where we feature a couple of these dishes. So,
man, I mean, I was looking at the ingredients. Just makes you salivate.
Yes.
So, man, we've covered a lot of ground today. I guess I kind of want to wrap things up here and ask you what are you most looking forward to in the next vintage for the winemaking side of things?
You talking about this year?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, right now I would say it's tracking like 2018. So If everyone knows, 2018 was definitely a warm year, very red wine friendly. Like I think it was a great red wine. So I'm super stoked about all my reds coming in, and I'm adding Syrah this year to my portfolio from Red Willow. I'm going to do a co-ferment Syrah. So
Nice.
I guess that's the one I'm tickled pink the most about. Right? It's just
Co-ferment with IPA beer or with Viognier?
and both. So I'll be
Seriously?
drinking IPA, right?
Yeah.
No, it'll be probably 3% Viognier in it. So, and you can't ask for a better spot to get Syrah than Red Willow, right?
Yeah.
They're the mother of Syrah. They planted the first Syrah in Washington back in 1986, and I'll just tell a little story. Syrah was hard to sell, and it's still hard to sell for the most part, but it was extremely hard to sell in the 80s. And it wasn't until the 1989 vintage when Robert Parker touted, oh man, this is the part we were talking about getting old.
Yeah.
Chateau Beaucastel got 100. I think it got 100 points. But anyway, it was he touted probably in 92 or 93, right? It was 1989 vintage, so it's probably 91, 92. He touted it as one of the best wines in the world, and that the Rhone can rival Bordeaux. It was a big moment in history, right? It was like this little moment where he touted it as phenomenal. Well, Red Willow planted the vines in 1986, right? So it was listening to David Lake, who was the first master of wine in Washington, and telling him that you have a perfect location for Syrah, and them trusting him and their location, and becoming this phenomenal spot to grow Syrah. Well,
Those vines were really, really young to be putting out a wine like that, right?
well, I'm just saying, 1986 planting.
right.
I'm not talking about Chateau Beaucastel is one of the oldest wineries in the Rhone, anyway.
I got you. I got you.
Yeah,
I'm following you. Yeah.
You need to bring Red Willow on to talk about Red Willow.
Okay.
But one of the cool little stories is when they planted the Syrah, the story goes that they christened the spot by drinking wine, Syrah, from the Côte Rôtie in Hermitage, right? And then putting the bottles into the ground where they planted the vines.
Superstition.
No. So the vines would know the vines had to know how good the soil had to know how good they had to be. Right?
Yeah.
So they had to produce this kind of quality in the Syrah. And so it's like a moment, right?
Right.
There's a ceremonial point. But to me, there's that story, that history, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to lose those. We don't want to lose those stories. And trust me, I probably just totally thrashed that story. It's probably way more romantic than what I just said. But to me, that's why I love the history and I want to be a part of it. So for me to get any Syrah from Red Willow, I'm just tickled pink.
Yeah.
Like they made my day.
Right. That's cool.
And so anyway.
Hopefully you continue being able to source your fruit from there.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yes.
So my last question to you is, what do you think is the biggest challenge facing the Washington wine industry as we sit here today?
It's a tough business, especially on the wholesale side for small wineries. You know, you're getting someone to talk about it from being the size winery that I am.
Mm-hmm.
So I really think owning your consumer base will probably be the strongest thing moving forward. And so that means you probably are going to have to have multiple tasting rooms instead of relying on the old model of wholesale selling. I think that model has been broken and it's not the same as it was when I first. So I've been in the business forever, so I know the industry. I've been a part of several ups and downs through this industry, but this moving forward now is definitely. I think all the wineries know this, is you have to have a strong relationship with your consumer base, and relying on wholesale is going to get tougher and tougher and tougher.
Yeah.
And the main reason being is there's just too many avenues of alcohol that are taking part of that away, and we probably need to have a better relationship with the younger millennials and what's the next, the Ys or
I
Zs
don't
or-
know.
I mean,
Yeah.
so we need to have a better relationship. But what they want is experiences.
Yeah.
So for me, it's a matter
And they
of,
want it in a can too. I mean,
well,
come on. I always laugh when I think about that, but
there's a place for that.
there is. I'm sure there is.
You're going to the
Just
gorge.
not in my
You're
wine
going
cellar,
to the
but there's a
gorge.
place for it.
You need a can.
Yeah.
Right? No, everything has its place, but I truly believe that having an intimate relationship with your consumer base is the key to surviving moving forward, because the wholesale side is extremely tough. And and just, your people who are listening today, you can see it. Like, if you've been around drinking wine for any length of time, where is the diversity out in the trade that you used to see on the shelves? It's not there anymore, right?
Right.
They don't want my wine on the shelf unless they really are into selling the wine. But a lot of people, it's just added sales to them, right? They have beer to sell, they have liquor to sell, they have other things to sell, and so that is shrinking for the ability of.
I think you need to figure out a way to fuse energy drinks with wine. That is where the money is.
Right. Well, they probably have already done that.
Maybe they have. I don't know. If they have, I haven't heard about it yet.
Yeah.
But
Well,
think about that. I mean, this younger generation, they're all about energy drinks.
it is pretty crazy.
It is really crazy.
Yeah, and energy waters and
Yeah, all of this stuff.
I need energy though, but I can't drink those things.
JJ, I have learned a ton today about you and your winemaking approach, and I appreciate the opportunity to host you here in the studio. Before we go, I'd like if you could please remind our audience again about your winery, Narratif, and Northwest Wine Collaborative. Go ahead and just give it a plug and talk about events, locations, hours, all that stuff.
Well, one thing we didn't talk about is my food series wine called Savor, and Savor is created for restaurants, right?
Right.
And so I have a lot of restaurant friends who are clamoring for. It's really tough to find glass pour priced wines from Washington, especially like Malbecs and Cap Francs, and name some of the varietals. And so I've created this series for them, but it's also an extension of my winery because I'm a food-centric winery tasting room. So the wines do very well in the tasting room. And the winery's in Prosser. It's 2880 Lee Road, Suite A, Prosser, Washington. We're right next to Alexander Nicole and Tyrtis. So we're kind of a really cool spot because what I love about it is all three of us are complementary to each other. There's no redundancy when you taste our wines.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what you want when you're out wine tasting, is you want to have new experiences every tasting room. You don't want all the wines to taste the same. So for me, it's kind of, and you have the sparkling wine in between to freshen your palate to go back and drink big reds at Alexander Nicole.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I love my location and I love the networking that we're doing with each other. You can follow us on Instagram, Facebook. We have a trivia. We're going to start doing trivia nights just as something fun to do. And eventually it'll probably evolve into some sort of wine trivia. But at this point, I want it a little more universal for everybody. Plus, I don't want to have to come up with questions every week. So. But we're going to have some wine and food cheese making classes coming up. Like I said, November 7th is the mozzarella cheese class with Cascade Pizza doing margarita pizzas. October 28th is our wine dinner. I think I'm forgetting. Oh, we're doing a balloon rally. Which is
for the Prosser Balloon Fest.
Yeah, we're going to do that Friday night. We're going to open up and do some fun small little charcuterie board and have like stuff going on where you can just hang out and just sit on the patio for a couple of hours.
Nice.
And get some food and some wine and get prepped for the early morning, because it's early morning for the balloon rally.
It
right?
is.
You've done it, right?
Been there many times, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I love it. It's a fun time. I'm hoping to get some morning shots. I have some phenomenal night shots in my taste room, but I want to get some morning shots.
Yeah, my wife has a number of really good morning shots there.
Yeah.
Plus the one in Walla Walla too.
So did you know you can, if you, I don't know, do you guys have a kayak?
No, we don't.
Okay,
I would
can
probably
rent-
sink. But
You can rent a kayak,
Yeah.
and I had a couple, they ended up being club members, come in, but they were kayaking, and I didn't know this, but I guess it's developed over the last several years, is the balloons will do a tap down in the water.
oh wow.
And so these guys had these amazing pictures of being in a kayak and getting these pictures as they're tapping the water.
That's really cool.
I want to get one of those shots
Yeah.
this year. So hopefully,
Risky though. I mean, you got your camera out there. You got, if you have a nice camera, you're
Yeah, yeah.
talking $4,000 or something for your
Right.
camera and the lens
Yeah.
on top of it. You do anything wrong and you end up tipping over.
Yes.
There goes everything.
So it's patience and
It's got to be.
yeah.
Well, this has been great. The one thing that we didn't talk about, but we're going to have you back on as a guest later on. Maybe in another 6 months or a year, we'll have you back on the podcast. We got to talk about your whiskey and bourbon making, that whole phase of your life that you're just getting into right now. So,
Well, it's Heritage Distillery. I mean, I tell everyone, if you just want to learn more about whiskey,
Yeah.
join that club. That's a fun club.
yeah.
Have you joined
I have
it
not
yet?
joined it, but you've
You
told me
of all
about it.
people
I
should
know.
have joined it by
I know. But we will definitely cover that.
Yeah.
Thank you again for joining us, JJ, on the Live the Good Life podcast. That's all we have for today's episode. Again, for more of Living the Good Life, you can find us on Instagram and Facebook at Aaron's Wine Chronicles or online at aaronswinechronicles.com. And for a video podcast version of this episode, visit my YouTube channel at the @ Aaron's Wine Chronicles 6666. Thank you all for listening, and remember, wherever you go, whenever you can, always live the good life. Until next time.